It's recording. Let's just get together.
Oh.
And then I'll just,
I see
after
what you mean. Okay.
download it,
Okay.
then I'll just take a still out of it.
And there's also that I want to do.
I'll take the best one with the one where your eyes are closed, Richard.
Well, that happens a lot.
So we can have a.
I have to take naps. See what I mean about how it's like if we get that timer on there, we can get one.
Oh, that kind of thing, yeah.
See, let me just try to squeeze. Let me just try to.
Well, sit down and do the other thing first.
Okay.
Do that one first.
And then I'll aim this. All right.
And then we'll fix that. So.
Okay. Hopefully we're all in the shot, right?
We're in the shot. Yeah, your seat's in the shot.
You.
I think that's good. Okay. All right, now you want to set up here.
Thank you. Yeah, guys. Thanks so much.
You want to set this up, Richard? Go ahead.
Okay. I think he has to go though.
No.
I was in Jersey City, but I'm back in Brooklyn.
Oh, Brooklyn. You said
yeah,
that too.
Yeah. My
We're in
fiance in Kensington on Ocean Parkway by Greenwood Cemetery, which is one of New York City's great jewels, consecrated in the 1830s. It's like this Victorian Gothic cemetery. Just
Famous
gorgeous.
people?
Famous people, yeah. Charles Ebbets, founder of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Bill the Butcher Poole, who was featured in Gangs of New York, this anti-Irish gangster in the 1840s, is also buried there. But there's a whole host of famous people. But I think what makes it great is that it's such a gorgeous cemetery with these curvilinear paths and different species of trees. It was sort of the predecessor to Central Park.
Wow.
Yeah, it's stunning.
Wow,
it really
beautiful.
is, yeah. I recommend people going to go there just to find a tranquil space to reflect
great.
and take a nice stroll. It's like 500 acres too.
What, Washington Square isn't good enough for you?
It's pretty special for me too.
Yeah, that's great.
I think all of us, right?
Yeah.
You know, Washington Square, right? In your family's history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What a center, what a center for the village. And I always think, that was a graveyard, and I always think it's like that's part of it gives it a sort of something like another level,
That's right. And whenever they do like renovations, they will encounter bones.
I know.
This is a potter's field, as you say.
I always think those spirits are saying, "Kids, live, make music," and it's like there's that spirit of like the past and the future comes together at Washington Square Park in a unique way.
Yeah.
The real past, the past of this country, the history of the United States, not just of New York, and the most current, whatever's currently happening at this moment, they come together in that park in a unique way.
That's right.
In a very visible way.
Yeah, political rallies.
That's what I
are
mean.
held there. And,
Yeah, musical things that happen there.
Musical space.
Yeah.
People use it for the chess players, the NYU students, all of them. Tourists come.
Lovers.
Lovers, yeah.
It's really everything, and I really think it's a sort of space people know they're drawn there. And the idea is like, that it's something, it's always current, regardless of how historic it is.
That's right.
And there's this ancient looking arch, but yet it's modern stuff that happens in that
It's always
park.
reinventing itself.
It's,
And paying tribute to the history too, a site of like importance that we're talking about Gerde's Folk City as a professional site, although it wasn't, polished in the polished sense, but it was a great nurturing space. But Washington Square too, for non-professionals just to come, bring your guitar, banjo, mandolin down on Sunday afternoons, play for a few hours, meet people, hang out, sing some songs, bond, socialize, all of that.
And it served a good creative purpose too, because you could try out material before you played at Folk City.
Yeah.
You could go try out your song in the afternoon
That's right.
in front of people that are just hanging out. They even said when Buddy Holly lived in the village, of course this is before Folk City, because he died in 1959. So right before Folk City, he never got to Folk City, but he would go to the other venues that were around, like the Village Gate and the Vanguard. But he would go test his new songs out in the park, just anonymously, even though he was at the time a top 10 recording artist.
Sure.
He would go to the park and play songs, and then sort of demo them in his apartment right on Fifth Avenue. But
where did he live?
He lived on Fifth Avenue and 8th Street.
Oh, okay.
So he would walk 1 block to Washington Square Park and try out his songs. And
it's
then,
like 2 blocks from here, 3 blocks from here, yeah.
Not even.
Yeah, not even.
Not even.
Right.
And then he would one bar, and he would test his songs out and then demo them in his apartment.
Yeah.
Brandon.
All right, so
Hello.
introductions.
All right.
Stephen Petrus.
Stephen Petrus, a historian. I was co-author of the book Folk City, New York and the American Folk Music Revival, and I curated an exhibition of the same name at the Museum of the City of New York, which paid tribute to Folk City, among other Greenwich Village institutions.
Richard Barone, this ain't the guy. Bob Porco. We're going to peel 30 seconds, 45 seconds of this out and use it as a promo for the 60th anniversary for Gerde's Folk City, which we're having. I'll say it now. We have Carolyn Hester, Willie Nile, James Maddock, Richard Barone, Terry Roach, Rob Stoner. The drummer is Conrad Meisner. Meisner?
Yeah, Meisner.
Conrad, with a K. Conrad
right.
Meisner, class act Conrad, and Paul Metza. I told you I had Paul Metza? We're here at the Washington Square Hotel, by the way. So.
And this is, of course, this hotel is where many of the musicians stayed. Dave Amram told me that
It used to be called the Waverly?
it was called the Earl.
The Earl, this is the Earl.
The Earl.
That's right,
There was a music venue in the old days here. This hotel's been here for many, many years. At one point, I believe in the 30s and 40s, there was a venue here called the Waverly, a bar. But that closed long ago. So we're in the North Square Lounge, which is, I've been bringing music here, but it's like in the spirit of the old village basement kind of venues, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not really a music venue, as you can see. It's just, it's not. You know?
Right.
But we make it that.
That's right.
We bring instruments and we make it a music venue.
Absolutely.
But that's what happened. Is that what happened at Gerde's? Because Gerde's was not a music venue originally. It was an Italian
Right.
restaurant,
Yep.
and they brought music to it. Izzy Young, etc.,
Right.
brought music to there.
Right, so the history, I was showing you a little bit about the Fifth Peg. I could play more of that, but I want to keep the discussion going so much. So it was, William Gerde's was the original landlord. When he got into his 80s, he was the landlord and the proprietor of the first floor of the restaurant, and it was called Gerde's, with an apostrophe and who knows where. The apostrophe ended up between
Yes.
the E and the
Between
S.
the E
I
and
never
the S, right?
understood that.
We'll get
yeah.
there, I kind of dig it. but-
Okay. No, I like it, but I never understood.
improper.
Sometimes I like things I don't understand.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's quirky.
Right.
Yeah.
So then William Gerde's eventually sold the place to Joe Bastone, who I can't believe you remembered that name.
That's right.
That's why it's good to have a historian in the house.
Right, yeah, Mr. Historian. So Joe Bastone and I think another partner brought Mike Porco in. Joe Bastone and Mike Porco were first cousins. So Bastone was in America first. So maybe he might have been born here. He might have come over as a young teen, but he was already here when Mike Porco came in 1933 at age 18. And so, fast forward to 30 years later, 19 years later, no, 29 years later, I guess it would be. So Mike Porco was about 46. Brought into the partnership at Gerde's restaurant. They kept the same operation going. And that was in 1952, so no music until late 1959. And that was when Izzy Young came over in November 1959 with this guy, Tom Prendergast, who was a patron of Gerde's, but also liked the village, liked the McDougal Street, liked the music scene. Izzy doesn't really know what his business was or anything. Thought he was well dressed, so maybe Madison Avenue or advertising or something. And said, hey, we should start a little club at this restaurant I go to. And the guy's trying to drum up business at night with a bongo player, or he had a roving flamenco performer. He had a mandolin player. So solo artists would be roaming, busking at the tables, or just probably being paid by Mike Porco to just entertain the crowd. Just try to keep people have another drink, you know?
Yeah.
And then Izzy came in and said, you have a cabaret license, you sell food, we have an idea for night business for you. And that was it, handshake.
That's right.
Handshake
Didn't
deal.
write anything down.
And didn't really, it was just Izzy Young and Tom Prendergast would get the acts, would essentially book them and pay them and work the door.
And the agreement is insanity. We get I forgot, 50 cents or $1 to cost to go in, and he got the drinks. So the place was filled with people drinking, and we're not being filled with money.
Was there a written agreement at all, or just a handshake?
No. Was there a handshake even?
Oh.
And so they were taking tickets, and it was 50 cents or $1, and Mike was selling beer and food. Now Izzy, of course, Izzy Young, as you know, was busy with the Folklore Center, or you could say busy with the Folklore Center. Not really busy, but he was occupied with the Folklore Center, trying to make a living out of it, and also trying to do this night business. So he would go home, get a couple hours of sleep, and then go work the Fifth Peg. They call it the Fifth Peg at Gerde's.
And it was named after a banjo, Fifth Peg?
The Fifth Peg of a banjo,
yeah.
tuning banjo.
Right. So that's like the peg that's kind of the oddball out, the odd one. So that's why that becomes that symbolic thing.
That quirky name.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you say, only the insiders would know that.
You're right.
So I have this, if you could show that to the camera, open it carefully. But that's, I'm working on it, I haven't finished it.
That's all the performers?
Those are all the performers that began, I have it in sort of, easy now, easy laddie.
It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
It's just four
is precious.
Take it easy lad, open it up.
Wow.
There you go. Okay, so you see I've only worked on 1960, 61, 62. I have all the other ones in here. Actually, I'm going to open it up. But if you close it back up, it'll go back to like a book size thing. There, there you go.
It's like either treasure map or a Dead Sea Scroll, as far as I'm concerned. Wow.
So if you go to 1960,
Look at this.
you'll see week 1, 2, 3, 4. I try to split it up, and about here is that's where Izzy left out.
Right?
So these are, I should say that the premise for, or the accuracy can be checked with all Village Voice ads. That's what these are.
Mm-hmm.
So the Village Voice ads were transcribed onto this piece of paper so that you can see exactly week to week to week who played, and these IBID signs are, Brownie and Sonny played
like
3 weeks
nights.
straight. The last,
3
actually,
weeks.
if you look at this, Brownie and Sonny played March 1, 1960, and for the next 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came back April 1, and for the next 4 weeks. So Izzy Izzy Young was not booking a great many other people, but that's the kind of exposure, if you were Brownie and Sonny, that you were getting as a performer. Number one, you're playing everything that you know under the sun, 12 sets per week. So they're getting paid $90 a piece, whatever. And I think what's more important about seeing Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry is think about who's in the audience for all those times, learning how it's done, right? Seeing Sonny Terry play harmonica, or seeing Brownie McGee. And you're talking about Happy Traum, who took lessons from, he was there for countless many nights.
That's the thing, right? The audience.
The audience.
Yeah, like the engagement between the performers and the audience. And as you were saying, Richard, you test out new material there. People are eager, are fascinated. They're young musicians themselves, learning. You're honing your skills. You're learning how to keep the audience's attention. So it's like, you don't go to university. Gerde's becomes your university. Becomes your Princeton or Yale.
Well, those residencies would be important to really work out material, too.
That's
like
right.
to really work it out. And then, of course, the offshoot of that is having people like Happy Traum, the next generation are there learning from the people that had residencies there. That's a sort of a missing thing now with the idea with live music, is that you rarely have residencies. Some artists do, but even in New York City, there's not really too many artists that have residencies. Les Paul until he passed had Monday nights at the Iridium, or that was an old tradition. And it's something that I think it's valuable to a musician to have one spot where you just develop your music.
Yeah,
still do that. Steve Earle come around to the winery.
Yeah, but it's not a resident. That's a very short residency.
Well, I mean, it's the modern age. What is a residency these days?
Well, that's what my point.
Yeah.
I mean, this Folk City was every day.
What's your point?
My point is that Folk City gave artists, you just said 2 or 3 weeks of a residency.
12 sets a week.
12 sets a week.
Yeah. And sometimes it would be,
a
times
modern
held 3 weeks,
held
36 weeks, right?
A modern
36 sets.
A modern residence is something like 1 show a week, or 2 shows a week at a venue. That's called a
means you're in
residency.
town.
That's like a residency now.
Or it means you're not on the road.
Right. It doesn't mean that that's like a residency, really. Residency, you move in.
Yeah.
Psychologically, you move into the venue. Folk City was able to do that. All of these ads, did they start advertising, I should say, from the very beginning in the Village Voice, or the first week?
These are the first ones I found. So it started with Ed McCurdy, 1960, and then Brother John Sellers, who I could tell you, I think I told you a little bit about how he met Brother John Sellers. And if you don't know who Brother John Sellers is, gospel singer, a protege of Mahalia Jackson. Now, how would Mike Porco and Brother John Sellers be buddies right off the bat in 1960? It's very possible that Brother John Sellers heard about Mike Porco's venture, not knowing who he was. Heard that there was a folk club downtown that Oscar Brand, the folk stars that were in the square then.
I wonder if he was talking about it on WNYC, Oscar.
Probably hints of that. There were. I should find it. I'm already having trouble talking and doing this at the same time. But there is audio of the first night. There is audio from the first Hootenanny in February. There's audio from the Hootenanny in 1962.
So suddenly the guys that were playing became more important. Their music became more important.
Because folk music is at a point now, at a saturation point, where there's so many commercial groups out, so many people trying to get into the business. There has to be a time. Folk music has to be a living, growing thing. And the whole history of music has been basically some sort of protest. Of most of the events, something happens, and people want to comment about it through a song.
But they do have radio. NBC was at Gerde's talking about a new club here in Folk City, in Greenwich Village. And they're saying, what do you think? I should find it.
This evening we'll take you to Gerde's, a brand new cabaret here in Manhattan's Greenwich Village section devoted exclusively to folk music and folk singers.
Folk music does make very pleasant listening, so for our first visit to New York City's new center of folk music, Gerde's, we switch to our reporter at the club.
You know the story.
I was there one of the first nights it was there. That was an exciting time because it was this new place in town. All our friends were playing there, and people that we admired that you don't get to hear so much, like Brownie and Sonny.
We were hearing the real stuff.
While you guys are chatting, but they're saying, what do you think is going to happen with this new place? And Ed McCurdy's saying, well, it's just opened. I think it'll be just fine. And Oscar Brand saying that, it's going to be commercial. Folk's going to be commercial. That's what music does.
Well, Oscar, we're wondering tonight if this may be the beginning, and it seems to be a beginning of the popular spreading of the folk songs among the general populace.
If this club works in relation to bringing folk songs to people who don't know too much about it, I will be a very, very grateful, happy, and fulfilled young man.
I think that there were people trying to help Mike Porco out. I was getting to Brother John Sellers. So either Brother John Sellers heard about this place that was folk and traditional, blues and whatever, or what I think was because Mike Porco worked at a club in the Bronx, a place called Club 845. He was a bartender, and he had also family members owning and running that place. That was on the jazz circuit. So you had Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie, Mahalia Jackson playing Club 845. Now, if Brother John Sellers goes to play or goes to see Mahalia Jackson, he's going to spend time at the bar with Mike Porco. Right?
I see. It's interesting the networks, how they developed, and at that time.
Who are you going to ask if you own a bar that's taking in music? You're going to ask the musicians you know from uptown, from the Bronx.
Maybe Izzy might have brought.
I don't think so.
Probably.
I think that was Mike Porco's connection there. Izzy brought Brownie McGee for sure, the Terriers for sure, the Clancy brothers probably. And you see, they were there in the 5th week, 6th week that Gerde's was open.
Well, let's get back to basics. How important do you think was the idea of a new folk club opening at the sort of at the end of the folk revival, really? Because the folk revival had been happening in the mid-40s to the 50s, through the 50s. Then 1960s, a new decade. So the whole world is looking toward the space race, new technologies, modernity, and suddenly the folk scene is still alive, but was Folk City venue, Gerde's Folk City, was that like a further extension of the folk revival, or was it like a new, like you said, commercial that people say, well, this actually is a music for everybody? And do you think that venue was symbolic of that? Like the idea that it's the 1960 new decade. Folk City is where you go see folk music now. It's
I think the musicians really helped usher it into a thing, to be a thing. Because at the bar you had a lot of people like Dave Van Ronk was in the Village. You had all those folks who knew that this was a potentially good place if we show up.
Yeah, and folk music was changing then. If you may correct me, in that it was no longer about doing old music; it was doing original new songs.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe a blend though, because I think we see the commercial boom begin around 1958 with the Kingston Trio's massive hits. Tom Dooley, and the Village was going to be central to really nurturing that and furthering that and accelerating that, and Gerde's Folk City a big part of that. But I think you're right that there's a new crop of talent moving into the neighborhood at the dawn of the Kennedy era, at the beginning of the decade, but you're also paying tribute to older people too, who are a little more established, like Brownie and Sonny. So it's a good, I think, blend, the old and the new, younger people learning from each other, exchanging ideas, playing in the same venue. Like I think when Dylan played for the first time, right, was John Lee Hooker on the bill. So that's kind of an interesting. We talk about like different kinds of diversity, race, and by age too. Dylan was 21 at the time. 20.
So he just turned.
We're on.
All right.
Richard Barone, Bob Porco.
We're always on.
Talking about the 60th anniversary concert. Party. I said party.
I think it is kind of a party. I mean, I think of it as it's like a celebration.
That's right.
You mean 60 years? That's and it's It's like 1960, and it's 60 years later. It's like that. That is a historic thing to celebrate.
It's amazing, right? I mean, how many places matter after 60 years that it opened? And it's been closed for 32 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think.
It was cool for me because I came to New York. I'm more like my entree into New York, in the whole New York scene, was really the 80s, really with the bongos. But even then, Folk City, it was revered. Like, it was a revered venue because we knew what came from there.
Right, we talked about that before, and I was going to bring up the fact that it earned a lot of respect early on, very quickly, from maybe not so much the patrons. The patrons were going there to drink and listen to music, chat, and it was very noisy. It was a noisy night spot. But the musicians gave a shit about it early on. I think more because Mike had already established that it was a family-friendly restaurant. It wasn't a dive.
Right.
It was a dive at some point. It became a dive.
Maybe, but it always had. Even when it was at its diviest, it held its integrity as the place where artists were discovered and where they created, and where people went there to see something important.
Yeah.
Even though it was just a place, also as Terry Roach's song, Face Down in Folk City talks about, it was a place people would party there. But it was also a place where something serious could happen, some music that was incredible, that was going to last for decades, that would still be performing today. Yeah. And that my students, when I teach music and revolution at the music school, are still like mouths drop when they hear the lyrics that Bob Dylan and these others were writing.
Yeah.
It still carries that weight. But yet it was also a place to have fun.
Yeah.
I think this show that we do at the Iridium will have that, where it's going to be a fun show. It also happens to have some really pretty serious, amazing music.
No, I mean, the musicians are top-notch for sure. Terry's so sharp.
Oh, yeah.
Stoner's really good. I didn't know that Stoner played such good piano. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I mean,
I know most
sharp.
bass player.
I mean, really good. And bass, bass, of course. That's his lifeblood. And we have James Maddock.
I love James Maddock. He's got the spirit and the fire of those 60s artists to me. I've worked with him many times. The first time I met James Maddock, I was doing a show, and Pete Seeger was on the show. And Pete asked me to play with the act that was going on right before Pete, who was Roland Musak. He was a Folk City. Yeah, Roland. So I was working with Roland, working on the opening song, which is called An Indian Prayer. Beautiful song. And then so I said, Madam, James, you got to go. You got to play guitar for Pete. So he was so honored. That was a really nice moment.
Yeah.
And that was how I met James. I've worked since then. I've worked with him many times, and he's a great artist. Really good to have on this bill. And all of the others on the show.
I find James to be a student, a disciple, if you want to say it like that. And then there are people who are the apostles. I like to call them that.
Yeah.
The people who are still around, Bob Dylan, Dave Van Ronks who's not around, but Carol and Hester.
Yeah.
Really talking about someone who's so connected to the thread that is the village, and bringing that vibe from Texas and her skill, the Buddy Holly connection, the Bob Dylan connection, the John Hammond Sr. connection. It's just amazing to me that she's coming, and I'm so happy that she is.
I'm so happy too.
Thankful and blessed. And Willie Nile, who actually, I'll have to quote Willie, he's not here, but a lot of the reverence about Folk City is more because Mike Porco was the man, so he was an older guy. He was 30 years older than everybody.
Yeah.
It seems at one point, it seems like he's always 30 years older than everybody. At one time, it was more like 40 and 50, 40 and 45, but there was an old world feel there where you didn't come in and desecrate someone's living room.
Right.
Because that was where Mike and my Uncle John lived. So it was, but they worked together. Everybody worked together. People who were setting the tables and the people who were rehearsing on stage. We were all in this together.
Yeah. There's something about the folk scene too, I think, that respects elders. Like Pete Seeger was a little older than the others too. By the time the 60s were rolling out, Pete had already been in his mark in the 40s and 50s. So, the folk scene and with Mike Porco, the respect, they did respect him. They talked so highly of him. I think there was a sort of a respect to the elders in the folk scene. They didn't always occur in every type of music.
Yeah. Do you want me to teach you that song?
Sure.
Down?
Show me, You gonna sing it too?
The words I know, I can
sing the words you know.
Well, do you need to write it down, or you just have this memory?
No, I'm gonna watch it.
All right. So Terry Roadshow taught me this. Face down to Folk City. I still haven't mastered it. I have another song that I've been practicing for 20 years.
Would you like to pick?
I haven't mastered it.
Would you like to pick?
No, I grew a fingernail.
Okay.
I'm getting better at it.
Good.
Ingrown pick. So it's would be E. So it ends up in E is the first twang, bend, and then she goes into. Right. What's this one? Is that an E something?
It's like a D, I think. Because if that's is that an F?
F with the
F, and that's a G, right?
F with the added. Also, that's just a G.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 3 times. 3 times. That's 1.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I love that riff.
Timing, and then it goes.
Yeah.
I'll double time it.
Yeah.
Alright. Face down at Folk City. When you came in here, you were looking so pretty. With the Dracula cape on your back, what a pity. Now your face down at Folk City. C.
Wow, that's awesome.
And lift off. F. There's some run there.
Yeah.
And then there's a hang. I think I just picked that up. And then it goes.
Nice.
It's like a natural progression. A, looking so pretty.
Maggie was a great songwriter too.
Oh, this is the one where it's very funny. And it's in traditional, or not traditional, but typical Roaches style, where it's 1 octave, another, and then another octave.
Oh yeah, wow.
Where the sun don't shine. I can't sing it and play at the same time.
That's fine.
Where the sun don't shine. And then do it again.
Well, we should really start thinking about what people are going to do, like, find out from the artists what they think they'd like to play, and start pacing because it'd be nice to have a balance, like so that everybody kind of does an equalish kind of number of songs and things like that. I think that's going to be important.
So if we have Terry come out early and she comes back, should everybody come out, do something, and come back?
Not necessarily.
We also have to vamp a little bit because Matic is driving from south.
Yeah, but if she comes on first, and then the other ones can come on and do their full. We can start putting people on. We can't have Matic, of course, as we know, but when I think build up to Carolyn a little bit, right? Maybe
close with Willie and James.
I guess so, but then how do we get to there?
Mm-hmm. So if we had Terry with Face Down, that opens it, that welcomes it. Oh, before Terry though, actually, I was gonna do.
Yeah.
There's two things in here that I could start while we're seating people.
Good.
So
You can start the show. You can start when the show begins.
There's that 15-minute thing of a song mash I showed you, where it was.
Yeah, I loved it.
Right, the song mash. So I finally put some footage to it though.
You can start.
So if we start with that while people are sitting, they can at least get an idea of what kind of material was going through, what kind of people were at Folk City back in the day. Then I want to play the fifth peg, which is 23 minutes and 45 seconds, which I can cut off the first one. The first couple of minutes are sort of a 2-minute resume of myself because there are people there that might be tourists. Right, you have to assume. And
tourists go there for sure.
And they don't know that I did a 50, that kind of thing. So it's sort of an introduction. It's a little ego thing. I put in.
Do it.
This is how I got here.
You want to put that very first?
No, I think that should be after people are seated, and now we want to try to kill 22 minutes. Then we throw this in, and then we have Terry come out and be the first performer. But by this point, I think everyone should have an idea of where the fuck is that? The Kingpin. That's what I call it. So it looks like this. So I didn't do not a lot of Ken Burnsy stuff with this, a little bit.
That Zoom is a little bit Ken Burnsy.
The Zoom is cool. No, this runs for 15 minutes. There you go. Then I mash something else.
Same key.
Jigga. Right, so this, they'll have a projector in the Iridium.
Yeah.
So this is in the background, people are sitting down. And we let this run out. And this is, whatever, 17, 18 minutes. You haven't seen what I did to it, though.
No.
So I basically just put faces and names.
Good.
Lightning Hopkins.
I love it.
Tell me, pretty mama, why you stay out all night?
I love that.
And just transitions into old school shit, new school stuff. So we transition to 3rd Street, and I try to use footage of pictures of people at Folk City, like Lucinda Williams at Folk City. So we go there, then Terry. Kingpin, 5th peg, and then so we're gonna be sharing MC duties then, I guess, right?
I think so.
So then I'll come in and introduce the welcome people.
Yeah.
So Bob, welcome.
I can introduce you.
Well, I think I'm gonna introduce the 5th peg. So I can already be on stage. So I think you'd be the second one on stage.
Okay.
I would be introducing you then, right? Bob, welcome.
I would be the one to bring Terry on.
And then I introduce you, and I'm out of there for a little while.
Okay, and you come back. But I can, if I introduce Terry, that would be convenient because I can just stay and play charge for her.
Then yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, it's more cheaper by the dozen.
Yeah.
And then I intro Rico Suave, and then Rico intro Terry, and then so now we have face down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then so this is something worth.
I like it.
I got some high res stuff.
I love it.
And it's just for fun. Since they have a screen, we might as well just use it, right?
Yeah.
So with this added to the fifth peg thing, we're talking about T minus almost 55 minutes before we actually want to start playing.
Wow.
So we should choose what time we want to start playing.
Yeah.
If it's 8:23.
Yeah.
So that we are a little bit late.
Yeah.
We gave everyone a time to get here, get into their seats, but we also gave James time to get
I understand.
to New York. So.
We push it as late as we can, but if it's too late, people might get mad, like the audience.
Well, if we're entertaining them,
Yeah.
if we're just sitting around, if like at Bob Dylan's 75th birthday party, then it's just me, one schmuck up there talking schmucky shit. Then I can see people getting angry.
You want to create a drink special called the Face Down?
Yeah, we should have a drink special. That's right.
A drink special. I think the Face Down.
The Face Down. What would be in it?
Something
Rock gut red ginger ale.
Yeah.
The Face Down, but nobody's gonna buy it. You want somebody to buy it. I think we should also have a nod to all those who have gone on
Yeah.
to the Frank Christian,
Oh, yeah.
which is the bartender will like this because it's expensive.
Is that what you drank with Frank Christian?
VO neat.
Wow.
He turned me on to it. It's good. You got to keep it in your mouth a little bit, warm it up before it goes down.
Wow.
And we had a couple together. The Frank Christian VO neat.
Wow.
All right, so maybe we'll talk about the drink.
Yeah.
Drink special. Terry would have an idea for the drink, the Face Down.
Yeah.
So what happens after Face Down is played? She steps off, and then we intro band.
Yeah. You want to let the band? You want to let Stoner the band do something, like play a song, but without one?
Yeah. All right. They should do a.
Yeah.
So what kind of tribute songs are we talking about? I mean.
Well, let's ask Stoner. I think one key that I find in a show like this is let's see what he wants, but what he would like to play.
Yeah.
Because that's going to bring them. That's going to make them do something great.
This is Carolyn.
Wow. She's great.
So
maybe let's ask Rob Stoner what he would like the band to play.
I think tribute personalities though there should be. I'll ask Carolyn if she wants to do something for Tom Paxton. Because he couldn't be at this show.
Yeah.
But I think we should definitely nod to Paxton, Dylan, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And, definitely Phil Oakes. We can't make a nod to Jose Feliciano because no one on earth can play like him.
Nobody can play like him.
So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, we could do a Phil Oakes song fairly early on-ish like that. I think maybe use that time when we're waiting to build up the show. Use us to do some maybe 2 or 3 tribute songs, right?
Yeah.
People that
this way everybody sort of gets on stage and off. Terry's on, she can jump in where she wants. Willie probably would want to play on it. He did a Dylan album. He can rock with Stoner.
Do you think Stoner would know the song Changes by Phil Oakes? Because I could do that one.
I don't think it's hard. It's like 4 chords, right?
Yeah.
I think it just repeats, doesn't it? There's no break.
Well, it just has a
D.
Just like. It's not the right key. I use the arrangement by is it Jill, Gene, and
Jim and Jean?
Jim and Jean version.
Oh, okay.
That arrangement is really good. That's Phil liked that one.
Glover contacted me recently, actually.
Who's that?
Jim Glover.
Yeah. Is he, where's he?
Let's see now. Ohio? He might be back in Ohio.
Yeah, that's where they.
I think that's where he's from, right? That's where
We should invite him.
He taught Phil guitar at college.
I know.
So then I'll play this.
I wonder if he would come in. If he would come in for the show. Wow. I think Jim Glover would come. That was not that far away.
Thank you. What is that thing called doing here to keep that harmonica up around his neck? I think it's just called a harmonica.
Butterfield.
Harmonica rack. That's not a bad name. Number 2, you know the night
That's Butterfield?
Sure, Gertie's Folk City, all right.
Everybody knew it, right?
Yeah, this was a,
I love that show.
this was to tell the truth, and it really had Butterfield on here. So this tells the whole story about as a young, how he came there.
I'm told him to say.
So I should have showed this to
The
Steve.
city decided to, and I figured I keep with the names.
Oh, you saw this one,
I
right?
don't lose a customer.
George Curtis.
Yeah.
Have you talked about the apostrophe?
Why is it where it is?
You know, originally,
It's my Uncle Angelo.
a restaurant, and he still called it Gerde's. They used to close at night, and they catered to all the hat and the factories around there. I used to work down in the village. I used to go eat at Gerde's. My father had
Couple of Italians.
I know. Always that.
apartment.
And they both wear shorts, right? In this
Yeah, Florida, very Florida.
Running under the same
White shorts.
routine that he was running before we took over. But 4 years later, the city decided to take over.
So this could be playing
I like
10 after 8, 15 after 8, 20 after 8. Everyone's still on it.
Yeah.
We were lucky in a
Play
sense. I call
between-
lucky. I don't know. Maybe because
I think we should run straight.
we
Run
found
straight,
a
okay.
place of
This way we kill all the time.
Because exactly what I was saying.
This way the show is rehearsed.
As long as you feel the audience will be
to 11
not
West
too restless. Yeah.
Just one bar.
I just hope it's not that
What year was
poorly
this? Was
designed.
No, it's good.
Not entertaining.
But we should make sure the screen is really like the
Right around
light in
that
the room, so people focus on it.
of the village main scene.
If you want them to really watch it,
Yeah.
tell them like if the lower, like the lights if they come down the venue,
Yeah.
and make sure that this. And I know this part of the show is not just some background
Yeah.
running. It's all we have to set it up like that, just to make sure people pay attention.
And I'd like to be actually. I learned my lesson in other shows. I gotta be on the floor, making sure that I'm directing traffic, getting people. Like I have, there's VIPs that clients of mine, older people, a lot of older people, that I want to make sure that they're in the right spots.
Are the seats assigned? Are they not?
No, it's going to be general admission. So that's why I used to be an usher.
Yeah.
So while this is playing, what other tribute people should we got to try to get in a Van
So I
Gogh
used to
song.
come down to Washington
Which
Square.
blues? And maybe we do a little rockabilly set, bring in. We do a little rockabilly set, bring in Carolyn. That's when Carolyn comes in. She can carry over from.
That would be a good
He
idea.
can do rockabilly.